The men standing along the muddy roadside already knew one thing for certain. If General George S. Patton appeared without warning, someone was about to be inspected. Boots would be checked, helmets would be noticed, uniforms would be judged. Every detail mattered. Patton had earned a reputation across Europe as a commander who expected perfection, even in the middle of war.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.
So when a dusty American corporal spotted the famous ivory-handled pistols coming toward him on a cold afternoon, his heart immediately began to race. He had only a second to react. His arms snapped upward in salute before anyone else moved. Every nearby soldier froze. What happened next was something none of them expected. Instead of anger, instead of punishment, General Patton did something that veterans would remember long after the guns of World War II fell silent. March 1945, Western Germany. The Allied armies had crossed into the heart of the Third Reich. Snow still covered patches of the countryside, while spring rain turned roads into rivers of mud. Columns of Sherman tanks rolled west to east. Half-tracks carried infantry toward towns whose names most Americans had never heard before. Supply trucks stretched for miles. The war was clearly moving in the Allies' favor, but nobody believed it would end without more blood. German artillery still struck roads without warning. Snipers still hid inside church towers and damaged farmhouses. Every intersection could become a battlefield. General George Smith Patton, Jr. understood speed better than almost any commander in Europe. Since landing in France after D-Day, his Third Army had become famous for moving faster than enemy intelligence believed possible. During the breakout from Normandy, through Lorraine, across France, and during the relief of Bastogne in the Battle of the Bulge, Patton had repeatedly pushed his soldiers farther and faster than many officers thought practical. Critics sometimes called him reckless. His supporters called him unstoppable. Patton also believed discipline was the foundation of victory. A soldier who cared for his rifle, polished his boots when possible, wore his helmet correctly, and followed military customs would usually fight with greater confidence under fire. That belief shaped nearly everything he did. Whether he was visiting a headquarters, inspecting a frontline position, or passing a convoy, Patton constantly watched the smallest details. Nothing escaped his attention. His appearance alone announced his arrival long before anyone read the stars on his helmet. The polished helmet liner, the riding boots, the famous revolvers with ivory grips, the sharp uniform that somehow remained cleaner than everyone else's despite endless travel across muddy Europe. To thousands of American soldiers, Patton looked exactly like the image of a fighting general. Some admired him deeply. Others feared his inspections almost as much as enemy shell fire. By early 1945, Patton spent much of his time moving between divisions. Rather than remain comfortably behind the front, he preferred seeing conditions with his own eyes. He questioned officers directly. He spoke with mechanics repairing tanks. He watched engineers build bridges. He checked fuel dumps and artillery positions. Most importantly, he watched ordinary, enlisted men. Patton believed an army could never hide its true condition from someone willing to look closely enough. On one of those inspection trips, his convoy approached a busy crossroads where military police directed traffic. Vehicles from different units waited their turn to move through the narrow road. Engineers had recently repaired a damaged bridge nearby, creating a bottleneck. Drivers climbed from trucks to stretch stiff legs. Tank crews checked tracks clogged with mud. Infantrymen leaned against stone walls while waiting for orders to continue east. Among them stood a young corporal whose name rarely appeared in official records. Like thousands of non-commissioned officers across the American Army, his job was simple to describe, but difficult to perform. He kept his small group organized, ensured equipment stayed accounted for, passed orders quickly, and set the example for younger soldiers. He had survived months of combat, not because he sought attention, but because he did his job every single day. That afternoon he was exhausted. His uniform showed the hard miles already traveled. Mud stained his leggings. Dust covered his field jacket. His helmet carried scratches from branches and falling debris. Yet despite his appearance, one thing remained untouched: his respect for military discipline. Training received back in the United States had become instinct. Courtesy toward superior officers was automatic, no matter how tired he felt. Someone suddenly noticed several staff cars approaching from the west. Engines slowed. Military police straightened their posture. Drivers hurried back behind steering wheels. A whisper spread through the waiting soldiers before anyone confirmed it. Patton, the word traveled faster than the vehicles themselves. Every man knew stories about him. Some had heard how he demanded immediate action instead of excuses. Others remembered tales from North Africa or Sicily. Many had listened to veterans describe Patton appearing unexpectedly near the front lines, asking difficult questions that officers struggled to answer. Whether every story was true hardly mattered. His reputation always arrived first. As the lead vehicle rolled closer, several soldiers became uncertain about proper protocol. Traffic was moving. Men were carrying equipment. Others were stepping around damaged vehicles. For a brief second, everyone seemed to wait for someone else to make the first move. The corporal did not wait. Without hesitation, he came sharply to attention. His right hand rose in a crisp salute toward the approaching general. For one heartbeat, the entire roadside became strangely quiet. The gesture itself was perfectly correct. Army tradition required enlisted personnel to salute commissioned officers. But the timing surprised everyone. Most soldiers had still been trying to decide whether to salute immediately or wait until the vehicles stopped. The corporal acted first. Patton saw everything. His driver noticed the general's eyes shift toward the young non-commissioned officer. Staff officers inside the following vehicles also watched carefully. Some nearby soldiers quietly expected Patton to ignore the salute while focusing on more important matters. Others feared the general might criticize something about the corporal's appearance instead. The staff car slowed. That single movement changed the atmosphere completely. Nobody knew why the convoy had reduced speed. Was Patton unhappy? Had someone violated regulations? Was an inspection about to begin? The corporal remained perfectly still. His salute never wavered. He understood that once offered, military courtesy must be maintained until acknowledged. Even though only seconds passed, they felt much longer. The wind carried the smell of diesel fuel across the road. Somewhere beyond the nearby trees, artillery echoed in the distance. War continued all around them, yet every eye remained fixed on one general and one corporal. Patton returned the salute, not casually, not with the smallest possible motion. He answered it smartly, exactly as military custom required. The tension eased for only a moment. Then, something unexpected happened. Instead of signaling his driver to continue forward immediately, Patton looked carefully across the gathered soldiers. One after another, hands suddenly rose into the air as dozens of men hurried to salute as well. They had delayed only seconds earlier, unsure of the proper moment. Now every helmet seemed to move at once. Patton understood exactly what had happened. One corporal had remembered his duty before everyone else. The others had followed after seeing his example. The famous general could have driven away without another thought. Most senior commanders probably would have. There were battles still unfolding farther east. Bridges needed inspection. Corps headquarters awaited reports. Every minute carried value. Yet Patton believed leadership could appear in moments that history rarely recorded. He quietly instructed his driver to stop. Nearby officers exchanged uncertain glances. Whenever Patton stopped unexpectedly, nobody knew what would follow. The corporal lowered his salute only after receiving acknowledgement. His expression remained calm, but inside he prepared himself for criticism. Perhaps his uniform failed inspection. Perhaps mud covered his boots too heavily. Perhaps he had forgotten some small regulation without realizing it. Standing before one of America's most demanding generals was enough to make even experienced soldiers nervous. Patton stepped from the staff car. His polished boots touched the muddy roadside. The general slowly walked toward the corporal while dozens of soldiers watched in complete silence. No one dared speak. No one even shifted position. Every man waiting at that crossroads believed they were about to witness a harsh lesson in military discipline. Instead, they were about to witness something entirely different. Patton stopped only a few feet from the corporal. For several long seconds, he said nothing. The young non-commissioned officer remained at attention, looking straight ahead. Around them, engines idled quietly. Drivers kept both hands on their steering wheels. Tank crews leaned forward from open hatches. Even the military police at the crossroads seemed unwilling to move. Everyone expected the famous general to point out a mistake. That was the Patton they thought they knew. Instead, Patton studied the corporal with the same careful attention he gave a battlefield map. He noticed the mud on the uniform. He noticed the tired face. He noticed the worn gloves and scratched helmet. These were not signs of carelessness. They were signs of a soldier who had spent weeks doing exactly what he had been ordered to do. More importantly, despite the exhaustion, despite the chaos of a busy wartime road, the corporal had remembered the oldest customs of military service. Patton believed discipline was never about looking impressive during parades. It mattered when men were cold, hungry, frightened, and exhausted. Anyone could stand perfectly on a peaceful training field. The real test came after days without proper sleep, after endless rain, after carrying heavy equipment through enemy territory. If a soldier still remembered his duty under those conditions, it revealed something deeper than simple obedience. It revealed character. The general gave the corporal a brief nod of approval before turning his attention toward the larger group gathered around the crossroads. His eyes moved slowly across the waiting soldiers. Some looked embarrassed. Others avoided eye contact. They knew exactly why. Most of them had hesitated. The corporal had not. Without raising his voice, Patton reminded everyone present that military courtesy was not reserved for comfortable days behind the lines. Customs existed because they reflected pride, respect, and confidence in the army itself. A salute was never just a movement of the hand. It represented the trust that held thousands of strangers together while fighting across an entire continent. The message lasted only a short time, yet every soldier listening understood it immediately. Patton did not single out the corporal for embarrassment. He used him as an example of doing the right thing without hesitation. In front of officers, enlisted men, drivers, mechanics, engineers, and military police, the lowest-ranking leader present had become the model everyone else was expected to follow. The atmosphere changed almost instantly. What had begun as a moment filled with fear became one filled with quiet respect. The corporal had expected criticism. Instead, he found himself standing at the center of an unexpected lesson in leadership. Nearby soldiers who had worried for him now realized they had witnessed something unusual. Patton had not stopped because he wanted to punish the first salute. He had stopped because he wanted everyone to understand why that salute mattered. Moments later, Patton returned to his staff car. The convoy started moving once again toward the advancing front. Within minutes, the famous general disappeared down the muddy German road, leaving behind only tire tracks and a story that spread from one unit to another faster than official reports. Soldiers repeated the incident that evening beside field kitchens, inside temporary headquarters, and around small fires built from broken fence posts. Every retelling carried the same surprise. The toughest general in the American Army had paused an entire convoy because one corporal remembered his duty. Stories like this survived because they matched what many veterans had already learned about Patton. His public image was loud, confident, and demanding. He wore polished helmets, carried ivory-handled revolvers, and spoke with complete certainty. Yet behind that image stood a commander who constantly searched for examples of initiative and professionalism. He expected high standards because he believed those standards saved lives. During the European campaign, Patton often reminded officers that leadership began with example. A lieutenant who expected clean weapons had to inspect his own. A captain who demanded courage had to share danger with his company. A general who expected discipline had to show discipline himself. Returning a salute sharply, no matter how busy he was, formed part of that example. Military historians have long noted that Patton spent remarkable amounts of time visiting frontline formations. Unlike commanders who preferred reports on paper, he wanted to see conditions personally. He questioned tank crews after combat. He asked mechanics how many vehicles remained operational. He checked food supplies and ammunition stocks. Sometimes he noticed details senior officers had completely overlooked. That habit helped explain why he reacted so quickly at the Crossroads. Observation had become second nature. By March 1945, Patton's Third Army was racing toward the Rhine River. German resistance was becoming increasingly disorganized, but dangerous pockets of determined defenders remained everywhere. American soldiers still crossed rivers under fire. Engineers still cleared mines from roads. Medical teams continued treating casualties every day. Victory seemed close, yet nobody at the front believed the war had become easy. The corporal returned to his own duties almost immediately. There were trucks to organize, equipment to check, and orders to pass along. Like countless enlisted leaders throughout the Army, he did not have the luxury of thinking about the encounter for very long. War moved too quickly. Every hour brought another assignment, another march, another uncertain destination. Still, the memory stayed with him. Years later, many veterans found it easier to remember small human moments than major battles. They remembered the smell of wet uniforms after rain. They remembered sharing coffee before sunrise. They remembered unexpected acts of kindness from strangers. And some remembered seeing the famous General George S. Patton stop his convoy because one tired corporal had been the first to salute. The story also reveals something important about military leadership that often disappears beneath legends. Patton demanded excellence. But excellence did not always mean perfection. It meant doing the right thing automatically, even when nobody expected it. The corporal did not salute because cameras were watching. There were no reporters nearby. No medals waited at the end of the road. He saluted because years of training and personal discipline had made it instinctive. That instinct mattered throughout World War II. American success depended not only on brilliant generals or powerful tanks, but also on millions of ordinary decisions made by ordinary soldiers. A mechanic checking one final bolt before a convoy departed. A radio operator sending one message correctly under pressure. A medic refusing to leave a wounded man behind. A corporal remembering to salute despite complete exhaustion. Small actions combined to create an army capable of defeating one of the most powerful military machines in history. Patton understood this better than many people realized. He knew great victories rarely appeared from a single dramatic event. They grew from thousands of disciplined habits repeated every day by soldiers whose names would never appear in history books. Whenever he found those habits, he encouraged them. Whenever he found them missing, he corrected them immediately. Only weeks after that period, Germany's military situation collapsed completely. American, British, Soviet, and Allied forces closed in from every direction. On May 8, 1945, Victory in Europe Day officially marked the end of the war on the continent. Millions of soldiers finally began the long journey home. General George S. Patton would not live to see many anniversaries of the victory he helped achieve. In December 1945, after surviving years of combat without serious battlefield injury, he died following complications from an automobile accident near Mannheim, Germany. His death shocked soldiers who had come to believe he was almost impossible to stop. Yet his reputation endured, not only because of famous battles like the relief of Bastogne or the rapid advance across France, but also because of countless smaller moments that revealed the kind of leader he chose to be. One salute from a low-ranking corporal could easily have passed unnoticed on a crowded wartime road. Instead, Patton transformed it into a lesson remembered long after the engines stopped and the gunfire faded. In the middle of the largest war the world had ever seen, he reminded everyone watching that rank earned respect. But respect also traveled both ways. The corporal honored the general first. The general honored the corporal by recognizing the example he had set. That simple exchange lasted only a few seconds, yet it carried a message far larger than either man could have imagined. Sometimes history is not changed by the loudest battle or the biggest explosion. Sometimes it is remembered because one exhausted soldier did the right thing without hesitation, and one famous general understood that such moments were worth stopping an entire army to recognize.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.